Hello everybody, it's your boy Prof Choff and we're back again with another video by a critical drinker, okay? So this is going to be uh, the new Terminator. I mean, it's not really new. I think it's newish. I have not seen it. I've seen Terminator 1, 2, 3 and the other one, which was kind of like, a John Connor thing where he goes in the future, the back. I didn't enjoy that much, that one. Don't even remember much of it, but I like the first three. They were fun. First one was very good. Second was decent. Third one was kind of but it was good as well because it was action. And we got my boy Arnold, but yeah, let's see what he thinks about the new
The
one.
unknown future rolls toward us.
I have not heard good
I
things
face
about
it for the first time with a sense of hope.
Well, I doubt you'd feel this way if you knew what was coming 28 years later, Sarah.
God damn, what is wrong with that chick? She has some. I guess.
But now I do, and that's pretty much why I drink. Terminator Dark Fate was pretty much exactly what I expected from the hilariously desperate trailers. A dull, disrespectful, lackluster, creatively bankrupt, and visually unimpressive attempt to simultaneously milk the classic movies for cheap nostalgia bucks, while also shitting all over them and using them as a springboard to launch a new, reinvigorated franchise with a cast of younger actors. What does this remind
what was that dude
invigorated
doing?
franchise with a cast
What
of
is she
younger
doing?
actors? What does this remind me of? So needless to say, I'm gonna spoil the shit out of this movie, so if you don't want to know what happens in it, you're probably better off watching a different review. There's a lot to cover here, so grab yourself a bottle of whiskey and fuck the glasses
she's a
because we're going
Terminator.
hardcore with this one. Ready? Good, let's drink. So Dark Fate kicks off in 1998, where a young Sarah Connor is chilling on a beach with her son John. They've stopped Judgment Day, destroyed Skynet, and everything's looking pretty good. And hats off to the CGI department on this one, because the de-aging process on these actors is absolutely flawless. Also, it kind of reminded me that Linda Hamilton was actually pretty hot back in the day. Might have to do some more research on this one, gentlemen. But then a T-800 shows up and murders John and fucks off. Just let that sink in for a moment. John Connor, the most important man in the history of humanity, the savior of the human race, the one character whose survival has been at the center of everything that's happened up to this point, gets wiped out without a single line of dialogue in the
Wait, what? I didn't hear that. They killed him. I thought they sent. I heard he sends the Terminator to kill him. And I thought it was gonna be like a defense John Connor, like a tower defense game.
in
but
the
with
history of humanity,
John
the
Connor on
savior
them,
of the human race,
killed him
the one
off.
character whose survival has been at the center of everything that's happened up to this point, gets wiped out without a single line of dialogue in the equivalent of a pre-credits scene. Who
He
in
really
their
loves
right
that scene,
mind
doesn't he?
thought this was a good idea? What's a way to shit all over the
this was
events
good.
and sacrifices and triumphs of Terminator 2, basically undoing everything that happened in it? If this doesn't tell you the degree of respect this movie has for the rest of the franchise, then I don't know what will. Like, how is it even possible for more T-800s to show up from a future where Skynet no longer exists? Why even use an obsolete T-800 when a liquid Terminator would have far more likely chance to succeed? Who even cares? Anyway, it's time for the
enough.
real plot to get going.
cares,
So we flash
alright?
forward to present day Mexico. Now, this being another formulaic Terminator movie, we obviously need to be introduced to our two competing warriors from the future. The first one to show up is Androgynous Thing, who falls from a bridge
Androgynous thing.
and almost gets arrested by local cops. But then
Okay.
she beats the shit out of them because she's some kind of super enhanced machine hybrid and then steals a man's clothes and off she goes. Because she's really tall like a man, I guess. Then the Apple Genius drops in, and he's a liquid Terminator who can mimic anything or
Okay.
anyone he touches. Because, what else do we really have at this point? Terminators have basically reached an evolutionary dead end in the second movie. Then, last of all, we get to meet the character at the heart of this entire story, the
I mean,
generic
I don't understand why they need to invent new ones. Like the old ones are good enough, no? Just send one of the old ones if they want to go capitalize on on the fuck, what was it called? Like the good old feeling. Just send one the dude from the second movie, the dude that can, you know, liquid dude. He was pretty scary.
Teenage girl. Generic teenage girl lives with her dad and brother, and they both work at a local car factory where humans are gradually being phased out in favour of automated labour. Nice little touch, even if it is about 20 years out of date. So the Apple Genius and Androgynous Thing track her down there, and they arrive just in time for Androgynous Thing to save her. Then there's a car chase with a bit of back and forth between the two sides, including Androgynous Thing doing her ridiculous
Is he gonna call her androgynous thing this whole time? No.
leap onto the rear deck of their truck. But hey, at least you can recut this scene to a banging techno track and make it look like she's
No.
fucking loving it.
Please don't do it.
Anyway, their vehicle gets disabled on a bridge, and generic teenage girl's brother gets killed, and the Apple Genius separates his liquid outer coating from the metal skeleton beneath to make two of him. Things are looking bad, because both Apple Geniuses are closing in on the two, girls? But then a really old version of Sarah Connor magically shows up and temporarily disables the Apple Geniuses with a bazooka. Then she delivers the most bored sounding line I think I've ever heard.
I'll be back.
Really? This is what you went with, guys? You couldn't have got a better take out of her than that?
I'll be back.
So old Sarah Connor goes down to investigate the
Jeez,
disabled Apple Genius,
that was actually pretty
allowing
boring sounding.
androgynous thoughts
Like
have got
her,
a better
even her face was like, I'll be back. And she
take
goes
out
off.
of her than that.
What the fuck?
I'll be back.
So old Sarah Connor goes down to investigate the disabled Apple Genius, allowing androgynous thing and generic teenage girl to steal her car. And she's all pissed about this, as if she totally didn't see it coming. Like, what did you expect these two desperate fugitives to do, Sarah? Just hang around and assume you were on their side?
I'll be back.
But androgynous thing is in a bad way, because it turns out being a human-machine hybrid isn't all that fun. She can fight fast and hard, but only for a limited time before she crashes, so she needs drugs and supplies to stabilize herself. Did you really think this was the best person to send back in time for a mission like this? Future people? Isn't a person with a constant drug dependency inherently vulnerable? Oh well, as it turns out, she passes out anyway. Then Sarah Connor tracks them down and takes them away so she can interrogate Androgynous Thing. But it doesn't go too well, and Androgynous Thing gets the upper hand, and after a bit of female dick waving to establish who's the stronger strong female character, we finally get some kind of explanation. So it turns out Androgynous Thing is from a new future, created as a result of the events of Terminator 2. Because Cyberdyne was destroyed, Skynet never came into being in her reality. An entirely different AI called Legion was created instead. And this entirely different AI caused an entirely different Judgment Day, and an entirely different war between humans and machines, which gave birth to an entirely different human resistance movement. Ultimately, this means an entirely different Terminator has been sent back into—
Oh, so they basically said, fuck the old story. Let's make a new story that's the same, but it's not the old one. That's all they did. They scrapped the old story and they made the new story that is exactly the same. I don't understand. Why?
time to kill an entirely different savior of humanity. Fuck right off, film. You're literally recycling the exact same story we've had in
Exactly.
every Terminator movie since the first fucking
Just
one.
giving it a
Now you've
different
got the
name.
audacity to claim this is different just because it doesn't revolve around Skynet and John Connor. The equation here is exactly the same as before.
is.
All you've done is change some of the values. Ya dicks. Anyway, old Sarah Connor explains that after her son got killed, she started getting anonymous text messages giving her a time and a location, and each time she got there, a Terminator would pop up and she'd
They got my boy Hard Note in this?
destroy it. How exactly does a single human being take out Terminators that have always required the combined efforts of multiple people to destroy or even damage in the past? Don't know. How did Sarah Connor know to be on that bridge at that time to save generic teenage girl when the Apple Genius arrived in a totally different time and location? Don't know. Were these Terminators sent by Skynet or Legion? If they were sent by Skynet, how is that even possible when that future no longer exists? And if they were sent by
True.
Legion,
Yeah, true. In their future, in their reality, they said Skynet doesn't exist because they destroyed, right? By changing the fate of John Connor. And instead of Skynet, it's Legion. But at the same time, we get Terminators from the future that was not supposed to have. I hate the. That's why I hate the fucking future backwards thing, because it gets everything so complicated that you don't understand anything, and you can make shitty movies without having to explain things because it's so complicated.
How has she never encountered an Apple genius before? Don't know. Why do they only send one Terminator at a time when they could just as easily swarm the place with hundreds of them? Don't know. Anyway, androgynous thing magically tracks the source of the text, which turns out to be from Texas. So they sneak over the border, but then they get caught by customs agents, and this whole segment just feels like wheel spinning, to be honest. But eventually they escape and reach Sarah's mysterious contact, and that's when old Arnold makes his appearance. See, it turns out he's the same Terminator who killed John 20 years ago, but he went rogue after completing his mission, and since then he's become self-aware and created a whole life for himself. He's got a house, a wife, an adopted son, even a dog, and he goes by the name Carl. Have you ever wondered what a Terminator would do with itself if it actually completed its mission and had no one left to kill? Ever wondered how or if it could somehow integrate into human society? How would it deal with the mundane reality of day-to-day human existence? What would it do as a day job? Could it form friendships? A personality? Hobbies? Could it love? No, neither have I, because that's fucking stupid. It's goofy sitcom material at best. Not the kind of thing you'd put in a supposedly serious action movie, but you'd never guess this movie was made by the director of Deadpool, would you? Terminators aren't supposed to...
Whoa, wait, this is made by a... But Deadpool is good.
Live and work amongst humanity. Yeah, they can look passably human and handle basic interaction to get information they need, but that's about as far as it can ever go. The T-800 recognized this at the end of Terminator 2 when it said this.
I know now why you cry, but it's something I can never do.
It was the movie's way of telling us that however much the Terminator might learn and understand about human behavior, it could never actually be human itself. Instead, it chose to end its life, knowing its mission was complete and its purpose fulfilled. But now here we are, cracking jokes and trying to carry on a story that should have ended 28 years ago. God, I hate movies today. So anyway, old Arnold reveals that he was the one giving Sarah the locations of the Terminators to kill, because he figured it would give her life purpose again, instead of...
Whoa. Why doesn't he just kill them himself?
You know, ending it in violent fashion. I guess we're not meant to think too much about how he knew where they or the Apple geniuses would be, especially since he came from an entirely different fucking timeline. So old Arnold agrees to help them, and generic teenage girl decides to put on her big girl pants and says she's done running, she's gonna stand and fight.
I'm done running. I'm gonna stand and fight. Stand and fight.
But you don't know how to fight though. You literally have zero combat experience. Wow. Okay. I mean, she's not some soldier that was like that's done their tours and stuff and started a normal life. She's literally a normal civilian with zero experience in any combat situations. Like, it makes no sense for her to. I mean, it makes sense like if a stupid person decides to stand and fight, but you don't win this fight. It's like me going to fight some fucking heavyweight in the UFC. Now, as I am, I'm smaller than them. I don't have any idea how to fight. I don't know jiu-jitsu and shit like that. They'll probably kill me in the first 10 seconds of the match. But I'm like, okay, I'll stand and fight instead of running away. Yeah, no, not gonna happen. Accurate reaction.
And it made me physically squirm in my seat, because it's like watching a preschooler delivering the Gettysburg Address. They figure out that they can use an EMP weapon to fry the Apple Genius and disable it permanently, so they go to a military base where some random dude meets with Sarah and hands it over to them. Who exactly is this guy? How does he know Sarah? Why is he willing to hand over extremely dangerous military-grade weapons like this to a group of people who are clearly extremely shady? Don't know. Anyway, the Apple Genius shows up and chases them onto a nearby plane, and they temporarily escape, but the EMP device gets destroyed in the process.
So, from what I'm understanding, they basically made a Fast and Furious movie. They don't explain shit, but they're hoping that the action, the characters, and the effects carry the movie. They don't want to explain shit, they just want the action, the characters, and the effects to carry the movie. But they didn't explain the characters as well, which is kind of weird, because if they want those three things to carry the movie, you kind of have to, you know, depend on those three things. Like a Fast and Furious movie.
And eventually he catches up to them and causes their plane to crash near a dam. So the final battle takes place in the turbine hall of the dam. Arnold and the androgynous thing go at it, and eventually they force it into one of the turbine
Jesus,
units,
brother.
and it blows up and severely damages all three of them. I don't know why this particular thing damages the Apple Genius so badly, because he's been shown to be basically indestructible up to this point, but whatever. Anyway, the Apple Genius just keeps coming. So androgynous thing tells generic teenage girl to remove the power unit from her body because it'll fry the Apple Genius just like the EMP device. Well,
What?
that was lucky. This is where generic
Wait,
teenage
what?
whatever. Anyway, the Apple Genius just keeps coming. So
Okay.
androgynous thing tells generic teenage girl to remove the power unit from her body because it'll fry the Apple Genius just like the EMP device. Well, that was lucky. This is where generic teenage girl gets her big hero moments. As the ruined and smouldering remains of the Apple Genius staggers towards her, she blasts it with a shotgun at point blank range to stagger it. Then she hits it with a club to knock it down, and she's about to shove the power source into its mouth.
Something very familiar about all this.
But then it gets the upper hand, and it's about to kill her in return when Arnold comes back to life and finishes it off, killing both of them in the process. And the movie
So
ends
it's
with
basically
generic
a-
teenage girl going to start a new life with old Sarah Connor, preparing for the war to come, and teasing a sequel that'll probably never get made. And that's it. That's the plot.
Okay, I'm very confused. Okay, so in the original, you save John Connor, you save the future, right? Kinda. Technically. Maybe. In this, you know that the thing's gonna happen. You know that Legion's gonna happen. What do you do to prevent it? Or you just don't prevent it. You just hope for the best. Did I miss something in his explanation, or did they not explain it in the movie as well? I'm
For
confused.
Terminator Dark Fate, God's sake. There are so many things wrong with this movie that I could probably create a Longman style video picking them apart scene by scene, but I'm too drunk and I'm too lazy for that, so let's just keep this concise. Allow me to begin with the characters. This movie is the first time Linda Hamilton's played Sarah Connor in almost 3 decades, and if you're a big fan of the classic Terminator movies, then I imagine this would be pretty exciting for you. The problem is that she doesn't really do anything of significance in the whole movie. Yeah, she has a few heroic moments where she shoots guns in the chaotic action scenes, but none of it really amounts to anything plot-wise. Compared to the Terminators and machine hybrids duking it out, she looks weak and ineffective.
I mean,
she feels
she's an old person though, and she's only human. What can she do really?
like a fifth wheel most of the time, just kind of there in the background, making snarky remarks and looking either pissed off or confused. The only real character arc she has is with Arnold over the death of John, but even that doesn't really go anywhere. Speaking of Arnold, I suspected from the trailers that he wouldn't play a big part in this film, and well, I was right. To be honest, he's barely even recognizable as his most iconic role anymore, so maybe it's for the best. He's 72 years old, he's had multiple open heart surgeries, and as a result, he looks slow and tired and overweight. It's made even worse by the script.
Hey, listen. Let's not be that disrespectful. My boy looks very good for a 72-year-old, okay? If that's him at 72, he looks very good for a
Making him
72-year-old.
into some kind of quasi-human and taking full advantage of his ability to make deadpan jokes, and it just feels cheap and disrespectful. When he sacrificed himself at the end, I felt almost nothing because Arnold died in these movies more times than Sean Bean. The Terminator used to be cool and menacing as a character, but now he just seems like kind of a bad joke that was included in this movie because, well, it's a Terminator film and it would just feel weird without him. And it's a shame these two veteran actors are so underused because both of them have still got decent charisma and screen presence. But do you know who doesn't?
Stand and fight!
Danny Ramos is effectively the core of this story, the character around which
Wait,
the
she's the why? Is she like the John Connor of the Legion thing? So is she the one that needs to be saved so that everything would stop and there won't be an apocalypse? Is
if
this what needs to
humanity
happen?
revolves, but we barely learn anything about her. We get no real insight into her personality, how she feels about any of this, what her motivations or ambitions are. She reacts to things and she allows herself to be led from place to place, and that's pretty much it. And I'll just say it, the actress playing her was horribly miscast in this role. Linda Hamilton in Terminator 1 was able to effectively grow and develop over the course of the movie, turning from a frightened and confused civilian into a tough, defiant and independent woman. The mother of the future indeed. And you could believe it because she really sold it to you. And that's even before she transformed into a true badass in Terminator 2. But generic teenage girl is, well, just a generic teenage girl. She could be played by pretty much anyone. She can't act, she can't fight, she can't hold weapons properly, she doesn't command the screen in any way, and she doesn't inspire anything except mild amusement. A flash forward to her as an ass-kicking leader of the human resistance is utterly laughable because she simply isn't believable in the slightest. I didn't care about her because neither the script nor the actress made me care. The funny thing is, Androgynous Thing actually proved to be less of a disaster than I expected. There's certainly no Captain Marvel style smugness about her, and I like the fact that she's fast and powerful, but only in short bursts. The enhancements that allow her to fight so well are also slowly killing her, but just like with generic teenage girl, we're never given much insight into who she is or how she thinks. Living with a death sentence like this would probably weigh heavily on most people, but she doesn't seem to care. Likewise, coming from a nightmarish future of endless warfare to the relative peace and prosperity of our time would probably inspire shock, sadness and longing. But again, there's nothing from her. She just arrives here and gets on with her mission like nothing happens. Again, I suspect the casting was miles off on this one. A genuinely tough, intense and physically imposing actress could probably have done something with this character, but Mackenzie Davis spends most of this movie with the kind of blank Katy Perry look about her that makes supposedly dramatic scenes come across as completely laughable. I suspect she was chosen because she's really tall and she looks kind of androgynous, but those things do not an action hero make. Remember Vasquez from Aliens? She wasn't all that big, and she was certainly still recognisably female, but she was believable as a tough-as-nails Marine because the actress sold the performance. Davis just looks gangly and awkward most of the time. She towers over Hamilton and teenage
You call her gangly?
girl, and visually it looks kind of stupid. The feeling I get here is that whether through necessity or design, there's just too many characters, and the script doesn't really know what to do with them all. The result being that the central story feels vague and unfocused. A script that had just centered around Androgynous Thing and generic teenage girl, or Sarah and Arnold, would have been much tighter and more effective in my opinion. But this is kind of what happens when you try to do too much with too little, trying to milk the past and set up the future at the same time. I looked up the credits on this film, and there's no less than 5 different people responsible for the story, and it shows. I said in my trailer review
5 people wrote one. Oh, that explains why it's
that the Apple Genius was an unworthy adversary for
Does
our
that happen
heroes,
for a lot
and
of
I
movies?
stand by that.
Oh, quick question. Does that happen for a lot of movies where there's like multiple, like 5 people writing one story?
I haven't seen
That's
the
kinda
movie. He's yet another shape-shifting Terminator that can impersonate different people, although weirdly, he almost never uses this ability to copy one of the main characters when it would clearly benefit him. At one point, he's even shown being able to manifest a gun in his hand, but he never does it apart from that one time, and it made me question why. I also have to question why they made him so much more human with his behaviour. Robert Patrick's T-1000 was memorable because there was a creepy,
There was nothing human about this motherfucker. It was creepy as hell.
uncanny manner about him. From his weird run to the way he never blinked, to the way he'd tilt his head slightly when he'd speared someone with his hand. It's like he was kind of intrigued by the concept of pain and suffering, and he wanted to explore it more. The end result was a menacing, powerful, and frightening antagonist. A machine that was cold and ruthless, but with the vague sense that there was something even worse lurking behind it. But the Apple Genius just looks bland and generic. I didn't feel
Why does he
intimidated
keep
by
calling
him
him
in the
Apple
slightest.
Genius? Wow.
honest, and I certainly didn't
Jesus
care what
Christ.
happened to him. I also didn't care much for the message of this film, which struck me as
was?
kind of cold and self-absorbed. Previous Terminator movies have emphasized the strength of family and romantic bonds between the main characters, the things that make us so recognizably human compared to the cold, calculating logic of the machines they were up against.
Yep.
Like the growing love between Sarah and Kyle Reese in Terminator 1, Sarah's maternal protectiveness of her son in T2, the romance between John and Kate in T3 and Salvation, and even the revised love of Kyle and Sarah in Genesis. Love, loyalty, sacrifice, and the hope and protection of the next generation. These are all things that speak to universal human experiences. It's inspiring, and it helps to remind us that there are still noble qualities in mankind, despite our faults and weaknesses. Now what do we get? Generic teenage girl, and the revelation that she isn't the mother of the human resistance leader. She is the human resistance leader. Keep that message in mind.
Okay.
Protecting and raising the next
Okay, I missed it. So she is the human. What? Oof, no wonder Future was so fucked.
generation
No wonder it
doesn't
was so
matter.
fucked.
You're all that matters, right here, right now. Never has a movie more clearly highlighted the problem with our current culture. You know, it's funny because the overriding debate on Dark Fate isn't whether it's actually a good movie, it's just whether it's better or worse than Genesis. To this, I would say yes and no. It doesn't shamelessly pilfer and
I don't think
destroy
I've
the
seen
series
Genesis.
timeline to the same extent that Genesis did, and the action scenes feel more competently staged, but neither does it break new ground or do anything remotely creative or different. And as we learned from Terminator 3, humour and Terminator movies are two things that really shouldn't mix.
Talk to the hand.
Ultimately, Dark Fate is exactly what I predicted. A retread of the same story we've
Okay.
always had, replicating the same ideas and dealing with the same
Those poor
themes that the
civilians.
Terminator franchise has already covered far more competently and effectively, and doing it all with the very obvious intent of kicking off a new trilogy that will almost certainly never happen. And to be honest, I'm totally fine with that. This is a story that's already been told, and told well, and now it needs to end. Speaking of endings, normally I'd wrap up this review by telling you to go away now, but in this case, I'm going to harken back to a movie that's actually good, and let Sarah Connor do the honours for me.
You're a terminated fucker.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. Quick question. Anyone that's seen this movie, what do y'all think? I think next thing from him I want to see is The Joker, my movie of the year. I want to see his opinion on The Joker. I love that movie. I loved it. Anyway, quick thank you to everybody that watched. Hope y'all enjoyed this. Quick thanks to the Patreons, Pedro Martinez, Commands, Korean, Robert, Swastika, Future, Situation, Hilter, Lemon and Moon, Nike, Dash, Ronic, Nala, James, Bizonit. Yeah. Hope y'all enjoyed this. I'll be streaming on Twitch and YouTube. Some Tarkov today, and yeah. See you guys. Have a nice day.